Gentlemen, we're back. It's been a year.
And we're back.
And we're back. Don't do that.
It has been a year indeed.
Yeah.
We gather here to talk about our three favorite things, three least favorite things, as we usually do. Ralph, Jake, thank you for joining me today. How are you both doing?
Good, man.
Energy for December as a content creator.
I mean, that's the thing, right? We're recording this on my 18th of December, your 17th.
Yeah.
It's been a big year. It's been a lot. And I'm like in that little final stretch where I got to get my year-end videos done. The last news show, do a yearly news wrap, game of the year video. I still got to do a PoE 2 video. I'm knocking that out right now.
Oh, nice.
So there's a lot that I'm just trying to squeeze into this last week before I can clock off the holidays. It's a lot, but it's good fun.
Sure.
It's actually really nice to look back on the year. Because right now I'm compiling the end of year news show, and I'm going through all the stories this year. And I'm like, damn, that happened this year. I thought that was 3 years ago. You know what I mean? So I cannot believe, for example, that Suicide Squad released this year. That every time I see that, I'm like, that's impossible. That game is 6 years old now. You know,
things move so fast. Like for me, Xbox is the thing. I'm like,
oh,
wow,
dude.
8 months ago they were like, people were panicking that they're multi-plat, and today Satya Nadella was like, yeah, we're redefining what an Xbox fan is. I'm like, God, dude, this feels like we moved 4 years.
Oh man, yeah, no, it's been a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely been a busy one, but I'm also I'm in that end of the year push, trying to get everything done, but I'm also trying to cram in more games that I haven't seen, because I always like to just
for sure
see as many things as possible before I make my game of the year list. And so yeah, I've been working on stuff, but also trying to blast through some extra games at the same time.
Yeah, same. I've been in that stretch where I'm trying out little Arkham Shadow, because I'm like, man, this is the only way we're gonna get a new Arkham game, and no one's talking about it. Everyone was so upset about Suicide Squad. I'm like, hey, this is pretty rad. This is right here. There's some indies I missed on. I heard Mouthwashing is crazy.
Yeah, it's on my list.
Yeah, that's it was 3 hours. Gene Park recommended me. He's 3 hours. Try it out. I was like, all right, I got 3 hours, and still haven't gotten to it yet. But my list grows by the day too.
I got 3 hours. Doesn't have 3 hours.
Nope.
Yeah, that's it. That's so true.
All right, Jess. Well, I want to hear from you guys, because I check in on both your channels as often as I can. But
Thanks. Wow.
Your reviews are so nuanced. I'm like, what is a top game for a skill? What's a top game for a Jake Baldino? So, Jake, we'll start off with you. Number 3, dude. What is scratching that itch for you in 2024?
So I will, just because you just mentioned it, I'll do this one first. Batman Arkham Shadow is in my top 3 best games of the year.
Okay. Yeah, it's awesome to see Roger Craig Smith back. That is one of the more exciting things.
I really like him. I think I like him in general, in all of his roles, but I do think he does a really good job as Batman. And I think to kind of position him as a younger, brasher, kind of lead up to the eventual, God Batman, Kevin Conroy, it's a good choice. So to spend more time with him in this game, that was definitely a big part of my enjoyment, for sure. It's just exactly what you said. It's a full-ass, real Batman Arkham game. Yeah. And you get the story. You get the gameplay. Granted, it's in VR, but it's so impressive how they translated it over. It feels really seamless. I've used these examples before, so stop me. But the fact that, okay, can I cape stun? And then you grab your cape and you do it.
Yeah.
And you just cape stun. And you're like, oh, holy shit. Okay, cool. And then you get in your first Predator section and you put on the detective vision and you're like, look at all these dumb idiots. I cannot wait to swoop down on them all. And it all works exactly like how they did such a good job of almost removing a lot of the VR barriers where they could in a way that doesn't feel clunky. But yeah, it's just being in that Gotham again, getting new looks at characters in the Arkhamverse, some that we haven't seen too much of before, some that we haven't seen in an earlier light like this. They don't spend the whole game with the Joker, thankfully. They let other moments, other things shine. They actually try and do a little bit with Batman's character as well. That I got emotion experiencing some of this.
Love to hear that.
Which is hard for me at this point. I used to be the most emotional person on YouTube, but like over time I've become this hardened, crusty idiot.
Calcified.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
feel nothing at this point.
And then the Batman VR game made me cry a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
no.
That's just so out of nowhere.
Yeah, straight up.
That's awesome, though. That's awesome. That's like
but it's
kid
fun.
dreams come true.
It's so much fun. Like, it was like my favorite example, like with this game, is like my wife coming home from work and just seeing me in the corner of the living room, just like on the floor, like punching someone.
She's like, I
literally,
made a terrible mistake.
She's like, what is he doing? This looks like Her, like the movie Her. Like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah, but it's like, it's that fun, like that oomph of like punching dudes, doing the Batman stuff, and getting a story at the same time. That just really, really did it for me. And I know VR isn't for everyone, either physical limitations, monetary limitations, space limitations.
Yeah.
But I was able to play it, and therefore, like, I love the hell out of it. And this isn't too out of left field for me, because the year Half-Life Alyx came out, that was my #1 game of the year.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's one I got to get to. Yeah, it seems like it's been a really good year for just VR in general. You know, like the big talking point for VR was always like, oh, they don't have the apps. They like, now they do though. Like, it's not like there's any gimmick or sacrifice. Like, they're getting full games. Like Asgard's Wrath 2 is like an 80-hour RPG on VR.
But I feel like that's a bad idea, though.
Yeah,
like an 80-hour RPG on a VR
my
headset, I think is a bad idea. You know,
I can't
and I actually don't think it is 80. I think it's less than that. I think it's like 40 or something.
That's still too much.
But still too much, though. I think because one of the things that draws me to Batman is that like it's 8 hours, and I'm like, yes, okay, I can do 8 hours with a headset. You know,
and it feels longer.
But like, imagine doing like Metaphor Refantatio in a headset for like 80. You know what I mean? Like, nah.
They brought triangle strategy to VR. I played that for a little bit. Yeah, and I'm like, this is like a very dialogue-intensive game where you'll just be like sitting on your couch, just like with these goggles, just tapping through lines.
Yeah, I mean, nah, I don't know.
What do you guys do in VR games when like you're listening to an NPC talk? Are you like crossing your arms and like listening?
I definitely get a little
I find
too
myself
into
doing that. I'm like,
if someone had like a little spy camera in my house watching me, they would definitely cringe watching me just behave in VR.
For sure.
I also just see what I can get away with. Like, can I, shove someone? Like, to me, it's that like
I'm
delinquency.
everyone.
Just like what can I do that they'll react to? That sort of thing. Like, I still enjoy. I'm forgetting the name of the game. Sorcery and something where you can just like, it's like an arena.
Oh yeah, Blaze.
I know
Blaze
that one.
Sorcery. Yeah. Where it's just an arena. It's just like you get like mods that allow you to throw all sorts of weapons at the wall and just see what happens. Like, you get everything from lightsabers to like Excalibur's sword and everything. It's crazy. But
I will say, just while we have the platform, good year for VR.
Yeah.
The Metro game, very cool. Flawed but cool. Haven't played the Alien Rogue Incursion game yet, but it's got some weight behind it. Vertigo 2 is also another one that I haven't been able to experience too much of, but like the deeper VR community is extremely happy with that. So there's been some stuff.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where it just snuck up on me. Rogue Incursion was one I didn't know about until like 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, oh, this is like literally Alien Isolation in a way, put in VR.
Yeah.
Perfect combo. What have you been enjoying, Ralph, this year?
Well, I feel like there's obviously your big ones. There's your Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Astrobot, yada yada. So I feel like it'd be more interesting to talk about other stuff that I played that's sort of a little bit left field. And I definitely put Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess on that list. So I don't know how many people know about this game, right? Because I think Capcom did a terrible job in revealing what it is, marketing it, and then following up afterwards.
Yeah.
But Kunitsugami is a game that they announced some time back, and it looked like it was almost like a character action game. If you look at the gameplay, you're like, oh, there's a dude with a sword doing combos, and there's demons and shit. You're like, oh, okay, that seems cool. That's actually what I thought it was until I actually played it at Summer Games Fest, right? And then I realized that was completely wrong, and this is actually a tower defense game. And it's a very lightweight, elegantly designed, fairly simple tower defense game. But it's actually very rooted in Japanese mythology and history and art and music. they put on like a Capcom as an example. They put on like a kabuki like play. They dramatize the events of the game in like an actual kabuki theater production, working with like an actual, like people who do this properly, because the cultural aspect is so critical to it. But it's just a really, really beautiful game that's so pleasant to play through and just has so much heart. Like, I don't exactly know why Capcom made this. This was never going to sell millions of units. I believe the story is that it was originally going to be like a mobile game that they decided to kind of spin up into a full release after some mobile. Some mobile stuff didn't play out how they wanted to. But it really does feel like a passion project. Someone kind of stewarded through. But then when it got to the marketing department's like, what the fuck do we do with this?
Oh God, what do we do?
So it's reviewed very strongly. It's, when you do find people that have played it, I think it kind of struck a nerve with a lot of those people. It definitely struck a nerve with me. And I just really love when big publishers, make little games. Like Ubisoft with like Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, and even Rogue Prince, 2D Prince of Persia games that came out within a few months of each other. Again, neither of these games were going to sell gangbusters, but they're just like little cool games that they wanted to make. And I think it's really important that big publishers continue to do that. Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to happen less and less in future, sadly. I mean, even Ubisoft is clearly stepping back from that. Yeah. EA has publicly said that they don't do that. Take-Two has said that they're in the hit-making business, and that's why they're winding down their Private Division label. Private Division label, by the way, was a fantastic label that put out so many great games.
Yeah.
So I just love when big publishers still fuck around and like do weird shit and, just make games for the fun of it. It's cool.
Well, Capcom, despite what happened with Kunitsugami not selling super well, they said they're going to keep doing it. After they announced Okami and Onimusha, they put in like an investor-related letter, like, we're going to go back and revive a lot of dormant IP now. I'm like, cool, dude, that's awesome. Like, yeah, you have your heavy hitters, and like Monster Hunter's obviously going to do, if we saw those beta numbers, like obviously that's going to be insane sales for them. Resident Evil does its thing. So why not go and see what Onimusha can do? Or fuck it, let's bring back Okami. I've never played it before, but like that was
Dino
just
Crisis, man. Don't you dare not mention Dino Crisis. Come on now.
Of course.
It's so funny. They said it last year too. They put out an event and they're like, "Oh, we have old IPs that we're going to bring back." And I remember seeing that and going, "Yeah, but like not Onimusha." No way. And then here we are. So
I would have thought it would be prime candidate. Like, I reckon that formula still has serious legs in 2024, 2025. Like survival horror samurai game, absolutely. Come on now,
with Jean Reno in it.
Yeah. Okay. My Mega Man love and soul is hurting. So, part of me doesn't want to complain. Like when I was growing up with Mega Man, like every year there was like 3 games. So I know they like overdid it in the early 2000s, and now it's just like non-existent. But I'm like, you guys are so good now. Like you already made a sequel that I'm so shocked it exists in Dragon's Dogma 2.
Oh man,
yeah,
that was a great game.
I reckon that game's really got the shit kicked out of it, like post-launch. Like if you look online at chat, everyone's like, that sucked. I'm like, that's actually on my like game of the year list, to be honest with you.
Same.
Dragon's Dogma 2, I think, was so fantastic, despite how clearly busted aspects of it were. I mean, I think for me personally, because I didn't play the first one, right? And I think I have to acknowledge that a lot of people say if you played the first game, then like number 2 is far less impressive because it's just, it's the first game again with nicer visuals. Okay, fair enough. But for me personally, having not played the first game, stepping into Dragon's Dogma 2, I absolutely loved that journey, despite, like the fact that big chunks of it were just like, whoa, what are you doing here? This isn't finished. You know what I mean? So yeah, I love that they made that sequel. That's very cool.
Yeah, like I played the original when it first came out. Like I remember after Skyrim, I was like, wow, I need another fantasy RPG. And I see this thing from Capcom, and I'm like, all right, fuck it. Let's give it a shot. And it's oh, this is like Shadow of the Colossus and Dark Souls, and it's got like a little Monster Hunter in it. Like this is so different, and I loved it. It just became this cult classic, and like Dark Arisen was the best version of that game. And so for me, like Dragon's Dogma 2 does the best thing I think that series could do, is like bring it to a wider audience, stay true to what the originals did, and do it better. Like the end game for Dragon's Dogma 2 to me is sick. Like I won't spoil it, but just what they do to their open world map I was like, we don't see people do this. And
Yeah.
I finished that game. It was really short in the scheme of open world RPGs. I think I finished that in like 35-ish hours. Like, it's quick because everything's on a timer. So while you want to hit all the side content, you're going to miss it because you got to like run everywhere. There's like very little fast travel. It's such a different game, man. I was happy to see it did so well. But yeah, Capcom's like just riding this high. So when they did Dragon's Dogma 2, right, I was like, oh man, like you got to go back to Mega Man. Like you got to like, what's this modern Capcom going to do with Mega Man now?
Dark and gritty Mega Man reboot.
Dude,
let's do it.
The X storyline is like really fucked up. That's the thing that people don't realize. Same with the Zero storyline. It's fucked up. I'm like, did you guys ever see that canceled X first-person shooter game that they were doing at one point? It was like a Doom clone. They have gameplay online. It's the audio warning because it's like really crazy. But yeah, it's literally a first-person game that was codenamed X, and it was again mixed Doom and Mega Man together, and that's what it was. It's insane. But I was like, why not go and just bring that back? Like, there's so many ways they could do Mega Man that just make my head spin. They're still doing great stuff. Like the collections are awesome. I loved Battle Network growing up, so seeing that come back last year, like that was one of my favorite experiences because I was like, oh my god, this thing that I love is relevant enough for them to sell again. Very validating. It was a good year for my Ninja Turtles too. I don't know. Do you guys like into TMNT big at all?
Oh, dude. Well, I mean, growing up, more recently, not so much. I haven't seen that Mutant Mayhem movie, whatever. Apparently, that goes super hard. Apparently, it's really good.
Yeah, it is.
And apparently, that Transformers 1 movie or whatever is just like fantastic. So I don't know, it's like a good year for retro revival animated movies.
Power Rangers game, Rita's
Oh my god, that game was awesome.
Yeah.
I love that game. That soundtrack is amazing. Oh, so good. But I brought up TMNT because like like there was a game called Splintered Fate that came out earlier this year. This is in my top 10, and it is like Hades meets TMNT. It was actually originally an Apple Arcade game, and I remember crossing my arms and like, okay, I don't want to play. But turns out Apple Arcade actually has some really good games. Like Fantasian just came over from Apple Arcade. That was from Hironobu Sakaguchi, and so here comes Splintered Fate, which people are selling to me is like Hades crosses TMNT. I'm like, okay, well, Hades is like the best roguelike I've played, so let's really check this out. I mean, it's the formula from Hades, but it's got like prolific voice actors. Like you have Yuri Lowenthal here, Nolan North is in this game, and like they like voice some of the turtles. Like, yeah, the story's really good. It evolves the same way Hades does. Like each run you come back and you're in the lair, and like you can talk with April, you can talk with Casey, talk with Master Splinter who's been missing, and you're trying to get him back. And the Shredder's not like the real mastermind behind all of this, but it was like $20 or I think 30. I don't remember. But as someone who loves Ninja Turtles and thinks the bar is very low for those games because everyone looks at Turtles in Time and goes, can we do that again? And I love Shredder's Revenge, but I mean, like at a certain point, I'm like, I want to play something different. I was very happy with this, but they've pumped out a ton of Ninja Turtles games. They did speaking of Mutant Mayhem, that movie, they did a sequel basically to that movie with a game. I think it was called Mutant Madness or something.
Yeah.
And it's like a Persona style Ninja Turtles game.
They just announced like a turn-based
yeah.
Have you seen this one? Yeah. Grid-based.
I don't know what's going on, but I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely I guess there's still magic out of that brand that they're squeezing out. But I can't believe that I had no idea that it was like a Hades-like thing.
Neither did I.
Yeah,
now
it's really good. Yeah, I don't sell it to people like you're gonna like it more than Hades, but like if you're a Ninja Turtle fan, like this is probably the best game you've played from the license since Turtles in Time, or of course like Shredder's Revenge. But that's again very much a riff on Turtles in Time. So if you're looking for something like new TMNT, like this is it. And again, like I was floored when I heard Michelangelo was Yuri Lowenthal. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, he's my favorite voice actor.
Great.
It makes sense though. I can see him as Michelangelo.
It's a perfect fit. But again, I'm just like, wow, they had the budget for this. How? Yeah. But it's been a weird year for them. They're all just building up to that Last Ronin video game that I'm really
hopefully happens.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Maybe.
But I love
that's the kind of feel. That's still under Embracer though, right? They're still under Embracer's banner.
Yes, I believe so.
And because I just feel like anything that they currently are working on, I just don't have faith that it's ever going to come out. Like, I hope that it does. It's just that there's just always so much shit going on in Embracer. Even though they seem to have stabilized in the last few months, I still don't.
It reminds me of when the Zack Snyder DC universe was like the next big thing. And they're like, we're going to have a Flash movie. We're going to have a Wonder Woman movie. We're going to have a Cyborg movie. And that never happened. And when they announced it, they're like, yeah, we're going to have a Cyborg movie. It kind of felt like in the back of all of our heads, like, that's not actually happening. And sure enough, lo and behold, it didn't.
Never happened.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, there's just so much stuff getting announced for that brand. So it's been because I don't know. Do you guys agree with the assessment that I think 2024 was like a really fun year to like go beyond your taste? But for me, everything I thought that was safe and reliable for my game taste, like the game studios, BioWare, really Rocksteady,
yeah,
really let me down this year in like significant ways that almost, I wouldn't say altered my game taste, but really shook up what I prioritize playing now because those safe bets were no longer safe anymore. Do you guys have a similar feeling at all with some of these games?
Somewhat. I think it made me at least express, like, I don't know, maybe make, pump the brakes, and not everything's always a sure bet, like with things like Hellblade 2.
Yeah, that got me too.
Which, like, leading up to it for years and years, as a game news person, whenever that game comes up, you're like, yeah, that's going to be awesome, cool, can't wait. And then it wasn't, or at least not for me.
I agree.
So, yeah, it kind of like, it's like things like that, and then Suicide Squad, like, maybe like, the heavy hitters or the ones that feel like in your heart are like the ones you're like, that's gonna be awesome, I'm gonna run out and like pre-order it or whatever. Don't pre-order games. That's just not the case anymore.
For me personally, I don't think it really moved the needle in that regard. Like I just think I don't really have high expectations. I don't have high expectations one way or the other about many of the games that I play, because I think you can just there's so many things that can go wrong. You look at like even Jedi Survivor and the state of that game on PC, for example. You're like, it's Respawn, you expect a level of quality, and then you're like, damn man, you can't even. And I know that wasn't this year, I'm just saying, like, that's one example. And sure. Clearly we had Redfall last year as well, and then I think. But then you look at something like Suicide Squad, and just because it's Rocksteady doesn't necessarily mean, oh, this is going to be great. It's because you kind of look at it in the lead up to it, and you're like, I don't know about this one. You know what I mean? I'm not sure. But then you look at Indiana Jones, and you're like, nah, I don't know about this one. Looks like it's going to be a bit mid, and then it's actually fucking peak,
Great
counterpoint,
yeah.
I feel like, it's just, there's so many variables at play across the board, and, you can have your suspicions one way, and, like there's a bit of the history of the studio that features into it, hype build up, whatever. But so often it just, when you get it, it will surprise you in good or bad ways. And I think this year was no different in that regard. There was some big surprises that were really pleasant, and then there was some like massive disappointments, like obviously Dragon Age, for example, which for me was just like a real gut punch. So
yeah, Dragon Age was a major letdown for me, man. That really stung. I mean, I knew BioWare was on this like down slope for me. That was a game that after like Andromeda and Anthem, I was not like going in saying like they should deliver here, but it felt like, I think you said this in your review, Ralph, like it really felt like the table was kind of set where they had everything they needed to succeed. Like, hey, it's single player only, like EA's got your back, you have all the time you really needed, like you've pivoted away from live service, like this is the fans were behind you, there was like everything that they needed to make Veilguard be explosive and successful was there. And I mean, I was stunned with what I was playing at certain stretches. I've learned though, with a lot of reviews I've seen, not just for Veilguard, but in general, I think I score, if you will, writing very heavy compared to other people. Like for me, game writing, like on the level of Veilguard, like that twists my stomach, something fierce, and I'm just like, what are you guys doing? Like, how is this getting out? And, but I see so many people are like, it's not great, but like, it's fun to play. And I mean, I disagree with that wholeheartedly as well. But,
sure.
I just feel like Veilguard's writing is really what got to me, just by like, I think that's where the studio pedigree does matter. It's like, you may not have the same talent that wrote Mass Effect, but over the years, you've attracted people who like that stuff and who want to work on that stuff. And in turn, there should be some level of like, this is the bar. Right? Like Amy Hennig's no longer part of, say, Naughty Dog, but like there's an expectation that when she left and she's no longer working on Uncharted and they're going into The Last of Us, you guys are still going to deliver, right? And in some ways they did, for some ways they didn't. But I feel like BioWare just like has a major identity crisis. It's like, okay, you have your customers expecting like one thing out of you. You very much want to be like an action RPG studio who appeals to everybody, and you kind of can't have your cake and eat it too. Like people want you to go back to basics,
Well,
and you kind of need that.
I don't know. I do think that BioWare was an action RPG studio that was appealing to everybody. You know, I think that's the pivot that they affected after Dragon Age Origins, or even with Dragon Age Origins, because you pivot away from like your Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights, and then you go into your more cinematic RPGs, which, you know, Origins and KOTOR and obviously Mass Effect, right? And I think you did have a formula that was because obviously mechanically those games are not complex. Origins actually is fairly robust in terms of its mechanics, but certainly, you know, you're looking at something much simpler for KOTOR and Mass Effect, right? But the depth came through the world and the writing, you know, and so I think there were so many entry points for people. If you wanted like a sick sci-fi adventure, we got you. If you wanted like just really deep world building pillars, we got you. If you want cinematic action, we got you. If you got romance, we got you, you know. But I think most of that was grounded in really fantastic writing. I think that was the heart and soul of that studio for quite some time after that kind of CRPG era. And that was really just, that obviously is just not there anymore. You know what I mean? It's just straight up not. So I think that's what I took away from this. Because in my review, I'm like, I think that this is going to mark a permanent... I said at the end of my review, this is going to mark a permanent change in the way we talk about BioWare. Because, you know, we look at Andromeda and we're like, okay, there's some stuff here. It's pretty good overall, kind of messy, but like, you know, okay, well, there's something here. Whereas with Dragon Age, it's like, the writing here is terminally bad for a studio that's built on its writing. And at that point, it's like, what have you got? You know what I mean? So
yeah.
That was very tough. That was a really shitty review to write. I really hate it. That was like the hardest review I wrote this year for sure. That was the one that bummed me out the most. Absolutely.
That's the first game to really bring like that and Shattered Space both brought a level of emotion out of me when I was like getting ready to do it, where I was just like, wow, I've never actually been upset, you know, stepping into a review where I'm like, I feel bad that I have to do this. Like I know,
absolutely.
Especially someone who makes news about very particular games, like I know Bethesda watches my stuff. I know BioWare watches my stuff, and I'm sure I'm probably the guy they put on the list. Like, who do you think's gonna review is positive? Matty, come on, check. You know, and then I step in and I'm like, this shit's mega disappointing. You know, I think of that moment. I'm like, that's gotta sting to see like someone who's such a diehard for you come out and be like, this is nothing of what I love from this company. So I'm right there with you. It was tough. Jake, I don't think I caught your review on it. What did you think of Bellegarde?
Those are like, all right. Like, so I had put a pretty good chunk of hours into it, but I never finished it. I just did first impressions. And yeah, I don't know. I didn't think it was like the worst thing in the world. The problem is that it falls into that like Netflix movie, like forgettable thing.
Absolutely.
For me, where it did not, nothing I really played stuck other than the gorgeous environments. And I don't know. It just, it was pretty, I don't know the word. I don't like want to sound too harsh, but just unfulfilling. Yeah, that ultimately the fact that I didn't even stick with it after putting out first impressions says a lot. Because I was pretty geared up to give it the go as a BioWare person, as a BioWare enjoyer. But yeah, I think it was also like there was just so much other stuff I would have rather have played. You know, if like I didn't feel like my time was worth it in terms of like the characters and the story. And very quickly, the characters, I was like, I'm not vibing with these characters. Not vibing too much with the goal here. Yeah, that's how.
Yeah, I mean it's funny you bring up dropping it because I feel there's a level of validity I get by finishing the game, being like, my opinion will not move on this now. I like almost planting my flag in the ground. But this year, with some of the releases that were there and that let me down so hard, I'm like, I do need to prioritize my time a little better. There's so much coming out. And I've always said that something you enjoy so much can inform you as arguably less, I feel, than something you're not enjoying. Like, I feel like when I'm not enjoying something as a reviewer, I learn so much about my game taste in those moments of like what I truly value when it's not there, which is probably why it's so hard to be a game developer, because you're just like kind of working an uphill battle the whole way through. When you think you're like, Shattered Space is a perfect example. Bethesda's like, oh, you guys don't want fast traveling. Got it. Like, we're gonna make this open world area. It's all gonna be concentrated. It's not gonna be like Starfield where you're zipping between your ship and ground and space a million times over. Like, it's all interconnected, and it's so low quality that fans are like, what the hell is this? And they're like, well, we did what you wanted. It's just not as good. And so you know, I sympathize with that for the developers. I'm sure it's not easy, but yeah, it just really left me in a spot of like, when I recognized, I got a comment about it. I was like, it was one of those comments where it twists the knife a little bit, but you go, you're right. Someone was like, how have you played Veilguard but not Blood and Wine? And I'm like, fuck. What the fuck? Yeah. I'm like, that hurts.
There's like a billion games you could say that of, and that's
Yeah.
I think the reality of what we do. And you know, I think obviously we live a very rarefied life of being able to play video games for a living. But the flip side to that is that we often don't get to choose what we play. I know that sounds ridiculous. Because like, we'll just do whatever. It's like, well, no, actually. Like, very often we have to play what's coming out. We have to talk about the new hotness, you know? Yeah. And it would be sick. I would just love nothing more than to go back and play the Mass Effect trilogy all over again. Do you know what I mean? Like, that'd be a dream. But I just don't have that spare, like, you know, 120 hours to do that. Because I got to play, you know, whatever it is.
The next big thing,
the next big thing, you know, and that never stops either. Like it never stops. There's never like
picked up.
Yeah, I mean that's it. And I think, you know, this year was a little slower in terms of release cadence than like 2023 was, because that was absolutely insane. 2025 though is going to be just nuts. I think like huge. Yeah. So yeah, it is. There's always, it hurts. It's such a bummer to be playing a game that you really don't like, looking over there and thinking, damn, man, look at all those people having fun. Like, that was me this in February when I had to play Suicide Squad straight into fucking Skull and Bones.
Yeah.
While Austin was playing Helldivers. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was me that month. So, that, I made all the wrong choices.
Hey, February wasn't great for me either. I played, so I like to check out these like anime fighter games because I grew, you know, they just pretty much raised me at this point. I look at like my PS2 collection and I'm like, oh, Ultimate Ninja and all like Yu Yu Hakusho, just all these like anime fighting games that, you know, they started off as something interesting, like, oh, 2D and 3D, and they stayed the same. So Jujutsu Kaisen is like this really popular anime, and they actually got a game, which is like a significant mark of popularity. But despite how much anime has become popular, the game side of things has not evolved at all. And like, so in February, I see this game, and I mean, the trailers were very indicative. I was like, I don't know about this one, but I fire it up, and it is like, I use the term lazy maybe once a year on games. I'm like, I know what it takes to make this shit. It is not easy. Even the worst of games take a level of thought and effort, but just, there are so many shortcomings on this game. They're innumerable. Like, literally the text for the conversations are big black text boxes that cover the middle of the screen, and with the surrounding UI, whenever anyone's talking, which is often, you literally can't see who you're fighting. Like, that sort of level of just like, fuck it, let's go for it.
Sometimes anime games, like with anime fans, they'll just be like, piggies, here's your slop.
Yeah.
I've played a lot of like bootleg ass Dragon Ball games where they just like shovel it out to you, and I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know how you stop that. Like, it's like they always go to the 3D arena fighter. And if it's not that, it's something very low budget below that, like a Dragon Ball asymmetrical multiplayer game. It's just like, you know, like, why don't we get more One Piece Odyssey style games? Like, oh, here's a turn-based RPG. I'm like, hey, cool. Like, this is different. It's not great. It's not perfect, but it's different, you know? Like, is it anime popular enough for that? So that was actually like number 2 on my list of like things I thought were just really disappointing this year. Is I played Jujutsu Kaisen. I'm like, you reuse like all the clips from the anime. It's like very little voice acting. The fighting isn't good. The presentation isn't good. Your UI blocks the fighting. Like, this is not like playable. It's not acceptable. And they sold it for full price.
So if we stick with the, just to get him out of the way, because it's a bummer. My other disappointment was a weird one. Alone in the Dark.
Oh, really? That's I'm surprised that you would say that. We haven't actually talked about it, I don't think.
Yeah, so it's weird because like looking at it before release, it's like, okay, that might not, you know, blow the doors down. But I was just really hopeful that this time they would nail it and nail it enough that Alone in the Dark could be another horror franchise. And it just didn't happen. and I found it to be just very middling.
Yeah.
And had some big flaws that just kind of another thing where it's like, I forgot about it a couple of months after I played it, like very quickly. Maybe it's because I'm constantly cramming my brain with like it consume. But yeah, the fact that I so quickly moved on from it and stopped thinking about it was such a bummer because it had a lot of potential, and like Jodie Comer and David Harbour as the leads was like a cool idea. And the fact that it was also just like a very simple game, it kind of reminded me of like a throwback PS2 360 game.
Yeah.
Just had a lot of potential, but it kind of like didn't stick the landing and really kind of fell apart in the gameplay department too. Like a really well-designed haunted house can only get you so far. And I was just upset that because I was just really hoping that Alone in the Dark would be a thing again, man. I just want to see that be a thing.
Yeah.
And it's the first time they brought it back, right? They've done that multiple times. No,
they've done it a couple of times, like twice before. I think this is the third time.
Yeah, there's a one with the fire simulation, and you get all your inventory in your jacket. That was like the big AAA one that they tried.
Yeah.
From like the 360 era, and then yeah, I guess A New Nightmare was kind of like a reboot as well, but. Yeah, so unfortunately, it seems like it's not going anywhere.
The studio ended up closing, which is a real bummer.
Yeah.
A lot of that this year, dude. Really sad.
Oh, dude. There was like this 2024 layoffs were more than 2022 and 3 combined. Yeah. So, and we talked about layoffs endlessly in 2023.
Yeah, we thought it was going to be the worst it could ever be.
But this is a bigger year for it. I'm just doing like the news wrap up now, and like in the first 9 weeks of the year, 8,500 people had lost their jobs.
Fuck.
Yeah.
So it was brutal.
Just a tremendous level of bleeding talent. Like it's very obviously concerning because like, you know, a lot of people are worried about the future of AAA just in the terms of quality, and then you're losing the people who made it great. You know, we came like this close to losing Tango until Krafton stepped in. Like, that's unbelievable.
That's so wild.
Like, I loved Tango before Hi-Fi Rush. Like, I really did enjoy The Evil Within, at least the first one. The second one I was more critical of, but I feel the second one's aged quite well.
You're the only other person. That's crazy. Everyone's like, oh, Evil Within 2 was so much better. And I'm like, wait,
yeah,
no,
everyone says
I don't
that.
know. Yeah, the first one I think is still so special.
Yeah, I think the first one just like, I mean, I experienced older Resident Evil much later after that, so now thinking of Evil Within, I'm like, it's very Resident Evil 4 coded in a lot of ways, and I think that makes it special. But I also think it's one of the few games to pull off the mindfuck storyline really well.
Yeah.
But I enjoy it so much, and Evil Within 2 is not bad. It refines a lot of the mechanics, but it feels more Last of Us than survival horror.
Yeah.
But I loved their games before. I was like, yeah, this is a great team, and I think that's why I had a level of confidence with Machine Games as well going into Indiana Jones, because I was just like, I've as someone who's covered a lot of Bethesda, like these companies are like my bread and butter. Yeah, Evil Within though I always loved, and then you know, so to look at Bethesda Studios and see how many of them we lost, like that was unbelievable to me when Xbox was like they were shutting down 4 of them. You know, fortunately, like Roundhouse got rolled into ZeniMax Online, so at least there was a level of like, you know, not bled talent there, but now they're not. I think the rumor was they're working on some sort of Marvel thing. Because there was a LinkedIn profile that said like they were working on a comic book IP. So yeah, just the amount of talent that we lost this year is just so saddening. So saddening.
And also like, yeah, like what a shit year for Xbox. You know what I mean? Like it's just, God, yeah. I mean, looking back on it, obviously you had these massive layoffs at the start of the year. You actually saw a lot change at Activision, at Blizzard. You know what I mean? Like they canceled their survival game that they were working on for ages.
Yeah.
They canceled the promised PvE content for Overwatch 2. You know, Diablo 4 still hasn't really found its footing in the way that people hope. World of Warcraft seems to be going pretty strong, so that's good. But more broadly, like that decision to their comms around like that pivot to multi-platform was just such a clusterfuck. They were like, oh no, we're just gonna be like testing the waters, and then obviously it was so clear from early on that they were not testing the waters. They were going all in on it, and it makes you think like maybe there was some kind of internal power struggle going on. You know, just you know what I mean? But it's just so messy, so inconsistent, so much drama. And now, obviously, we're at a point where it's clear that Microsoft is a multi-platform publisher. The day of the Xbox exclusive is over. If it is exclusive, it's going to be a timed exclusive. We finally got to that understanding. But even then, Microsoft still has not really explicitly said it aloud in definitive terms. You still kind of need to read the tea leaves, So, but I mean, for me personally, that decision to close Tango and that was Arcane. It was Tango and oh my god, I just
Roundhouse, Alpha Dog.
Yeah. Yes, the mobile publisher. Yeah. That was and Arcane Austin, obviously. Like the decision to close Tango was for me. I don't know, man. It just seemed that happened in the same week that that company hit a $3 trillion market cap. You know what I mean? And everyone's like, well, you can't really connect those two things. It's like, yes, you fucking can. Like, you can absolutely draw a line between how much money this gigantic corporation has and their decision to close down one of their best studios in terms of output. You can absolutely draw that line. And anyone who says you can't is just like, I don't know, it's full. Anyway. So, that really, I think, shifted my perception a lot of Xbox this year. But at the same time, like, let's not forget, Sony didn't have a great year either. Like, plenty of missteps on that front as well. But I think in particular, Xbox, that decision, I think that did a lot of damage to their brand. I think it was a very, very, very dumb decision that has hurt their brand quite significantly.
As someone who runs an Xbox podcast, let me tell you what. It has been tough to find a positive headline. Every week, bro, it feels like there's been something. Like, they're literally going out in a blaze of glory in 2024. Like, oh, me and Cog were setting up the show, and we're like, oh yeah, it's gonna be like a nice light week here. Like, it's after the Game Awards. Like, we'll kind of just shoot the breeze and stuff. And like, Satya Nadella steps out. He's like, no, like, we're redefining what an Xbox fan means. Meanwhile, at the same time, Matt Booty's coming out in an interview with Variety and saying we're still evaluating exclusives on case by case. And I'm like, what are you guys?
You guys got to lock this down.
Seriously.
Yeah.
No, but I think they understand, like, obviously Matt Booty understands that if you say no more exclusives, then the console business is already already collapsed. Like, PS5's outselling Xbox like 5-1. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But if you then say it aloud, oh, there's no more exclusives, then it further undermines the value of an Xbox console. It's like, why would you buy an Xbox at this point? You know what I mean? And so, but then there's Satya Nadella, probably doesn't give a shit about Xbox hardware. He's just like, no, I'm not thinking on that level anymore. That's not profit generating for our broader business. It's other things now. It's Game Pass subscriptions, it's multi-platform strategy, it's xCloud, yada, yada. So I think that's that power struggle there, or at least it's like Matt Booty trying to remain focused on the Xbox business as it used to be, with like Satya Nadella perhaps just talking about the business as it actually is today,
Yeah.
But yeah, man,
their revenue's been crazy since they got Activision Blizzard. But the most startling statistic that hit me leading into 2024 was that after Xbox had like the 2023 kind of year that you could imagine them having if they bought all these teams, like, oh, you get a Hi-Fi Rush, Forza, Starfield, like new IP and old like hero exclusives. Of course, they had Redfall, which was like tragic, but like, they had a lot of exclusives, a lot of things ready to go. They finally launched them all. New Year comes around, and I think their profit margins were like 1% increase, like year over year on revenue, like really bad, despite having like quarterly releases, big Game Pass games and everything. It's like, this company's not selling games, dude. Like, they're just not. And now they bought Activision Blizzard. Now they're up like 50%. Like, they're seeing tremendous spikes. But
do we know about the Black Ops 6, how that worked out for them? Because that felt like that was going to be like this big gamble moment where they do this big thing.
The problem with Xbox is they don't speak in hard numbers. So they're like, biggest launch ever for Call of Duty.
Right.
And
exactly.
Number one Call of Duty ever. I'm like, well, I don't know what that really is. I mean, Circana will certainly give us some sort of idea. I mean, it's Call of Duty. So even last year when MW3 was terrible, it was still number one. Still a top selling game. So I think you'll see a similar result, but how much that actually is and how much Game Pass benefit from that, like technically Starfield, they said was the best day one Game Pass game they ever had. And we saw, as I just mentioned, like that did not move their profits much. So I just look at Call of Duty, I'm like, hopefully, that was their big gamble, right? Like that was like, it kind of, before Call of Duty, it's easy to forget now, but before Black Ops 6, it was like, this company also needs to justify day one because they just shook up all of their tiers. Like, I almost forgot that even happened. They completely changed the value proposition of Game Pass and Ultimate staying at 20, or I think it got moved up to 20. Sorry. Like, it's a tremendous overhaul of the business. And for it to all happen in that 8-month stretch is like a fucking whirlwind where I don't think they'll feel the damage of this, because Jez Corden put out a great article saying like, yeah, they Xbox is continuing to bring games over to PlayStation and Nintendo because they're not seeing any sort of material impact. Like, people aren't leaving Xbox. There's still a high amount of users. And I'm like, yeah, probably because like food and shit is really expensive and like no one needs to go out and buy a new console. But when it's time to line these two up next generation and be like, where am I going? I said, that is when you're going to see the impact. That is definitely when you're going to really feel it. Like, when people are going to, why would I commit to a company that pivoted mid-generation? I won't get it. I would never do that. I'm going to buy all consoles at launch, though. So, don't listen to me.
We're all gaming degenerates.
Yeah. Looking forward, just to kind of wrap us up a little bit here, gents. I just want to know something that you're looking forward to next year, be it game, event, whatever it may be. We'll end on a positive note here. Jake.
I'm looking forward to the 2025 season of the Friends Per Second podcast.
Oh shit! Look at him fucking plug in his shit without your permission. You didn't even invite him to do that, Matty. He's just using your platform to promote his terrible podcast. Who else is on that? Who else is on that podcast for you, by the way?
Shill Up.
Shill Up. That's right. Yeah. Fake Baldino.
That's incredible. That's great.
We already did this one. We already did this. It was Lucy Shames. It was
Lucy
Fake
Shames,
Baldino.
right. Yeah.
And it was Shill Up. That's it.
Incredible. Anyway, that podcast sucks ass. For me, 2025, one of them is Mafia: The Old Country.
Oh, nice.
I like a good story adventure-y type thing. I like shooting dudes and watching cutscenes. It's like my favorite thing to do in video games. So for that, the fact that we finally got a little bit of a look of it at the Game Awards, I'm happy. I'm liking what I'm seeing. I wish I could see gameplay, but I can kind of like expect what it might be like. But I'm incredibly excited for the storytelling and the change of setting. I think that time period, the country is different. We haven't seen that really in games. And I think there's a lot of potential there for that to be pretty unique. As much as the reality is like a lot of people could just go for more Mafia games where you're in a New York City and you got a trench coat and a Tommy gun or whatever. The fact that they're doing something different, again, after Mafia 3, which was also incredibly different, I still think is exciting. It's keeping it fresh. It's keeping it interesting. I also just really love The Godfather Part 2. So if this is a little bit like that, I'm happy. But I did say
Part 2 was not in the Old Country. Part 1 was in the Old Country.
No, Part 2 has all the flashback stuff.
No,
with young Vito Corleone.
Yeah, but he's only.
I'm talking Robert De Niro.
Yeah, he's only in New York. Then he's not in. He only goes back to the Old Country that one time to stick the knife in, whatever.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome.
Part 1 is one with Apollonia and all that sort of stuff. Remember?
Yeah, and those two guys.
Yeah,
guards.
That's it. There's two guys. Yeah.
It's. I don't know. I think it's just a really good position for a game. Also, I think we said this on the podcast, but there was a shot in the trailer that was like cars, like old time cars down a road, and then also guys on horses.
Yeah.
And just from like a gameplay and like sequencing set piece experience, if they could do that in a game, horses and cars, like that's fucking sweet. So I'd love to see that.
Yeah. I'm very curious how they handle the open world in that I feel like Mafia has this sort of interesting setup for its open world. Like 1 and 2 are like, yeah, you have this open world, but it's not like
anything in it.
Yeah, here's like your side quests and checklists and stuff. Like they don't do that.
Yeah.
3 kinda, I put in quotes, had it in that they're like, hey, you're gonna clear out all these like boroughs and stuff, but it's to unlock the next main story mission. So it's not really side content, but they kind of framed it that way. So I'm curious what this one does. Like, do they go more GTA-like and kind of just have it be very dynamic and interactive? Do they keep it like Mafia's always been, which is just like it's a space for these missions to exist and you're done in like 15, 20 hours and that's it? Like, what do you expect on that level? Because that's the thing I wonder is like, I feel like Hangar 13's presentation and like the way they capture a time period is very underrated. Like, even though Mafia 3 was like pretty flawed, just like the lengths they're willing to go to realize those time periods I've always found very admirable. So like, what do you expect in the terms of their open world? Like, do you think they're gonna stick with the traditional sort of approach?
There's the two sides, right? Like, I agree. Like, I like how they do it, and I like how it's not like it's more of a set piece and it's an immersion thing, and it's cool. It's less of you know, an endless busy work thing. So I would love to see them continue that. But the reality is, I don't know, there might be pressure for them at this point. It's like, hey, you're building this massive world, this big expensive world. You got to find a better reason to keep people in it. You know, I don't know if they'll be able to justify it.
Business sense.
And what do you do in Sicily 1915 for side objectives? God knows. What the fuck do you do?
Wrangle horses.
You make some wine. I don't know. Like,
yeah, they have like a mini game where you have to stamp on the grapes. You know.
Yeah.
You have to pull each trigger to like stomp. That'd be sick. I'd play that.
That'd be pretty good. So who knows? The only other thing I have on my list right now, Civ is a boring one, because Civ, I'm just curious to see how they shake it up, because usually like when they make a new one, they have like a they have a reason for doing it, like they don't just like add more features. But the other one is Kingmakers. That's the one where you're a guy in medieval times with a gun.
Yeah, I just saw that for the first time the other day. I was like, "What the hell is this?"
Oh,
thing?
welcome, brother. Yeah, it's we've been fiending for this one for a while. It's going into early access in 2025, and I'm just excited because I like irreverent, silly, fun concepts in games.
Yeah,
and you know, we've had a lot of them. We always do. And this one just really appeals to me.
So then you must be a big fan of Squirrel with a Gun.
Oh, I played through like that whole fucking game, and I didn't even make a video.
No way.
I didn't even make a video, so joke's on me. I didn't even. But yeah, I just
you did something for your own enjoyment, please.
But it wasn't that good. But I continued to play it. It's like a messy, weird Mario 64 where you're collecting stars.
Amazing.
And like you're placed in environments, and you have to run around and collect things, and ultimately collect a star. And you have a gun, and then eventually like a grenade launcher, a shotgun. Yeah, that's not on my Game of the Year list, but that is a thing. If you have Game Pass or whatever, or Steam credit, go ahead.
Hell yeah. Ralph, what are you looking forward to next year, if anything?
Well, actually, just today, I uploaded a preview for a game called Skate Story.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen this one?
Yeah, I didn't like it when I played it. I played like the Next Fest demo or whatever.
You didn't like it?
No.
Oh, what? Why? Tell me.
It was just stiff, and I didn't not like it, but I just found it like stiff. And the demo only kind of gave you like the tutorial, and then I was like, okay, like what's the deal with this? Okay. I do like the humor, or it's not really humor, but it's the weirdness of it, and the humor that comes from the weirdness. I get what you mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're really digging it.
Yeah, man. I am not going to it for a competent like skating video game. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna go play Tony Hawk or Skate if I want that. Like this is very vibes based. And I think the art is just like unbelievable. I think the setting and the lore, unbelievable. The soundtrack is absolutely S tier, like properly licensed music from actual talented musicians. I just really love a game that puts forward a vibe like very strongly. You know, it just like decides like this is what we want you to feel when you're playing this game, and just like leans into that 1000%. I'm really into those experiences.
Yeah,
it's why I liked like Trek to Yomi. It was like a cinematic 2D.
Yeah,
but it was like a pretty shitty game to play. Like the gameplay was cool. Ass.
Yeah,
but the vibe of it was impeccable. The same thing with like Sable, for example, where like technically it was in a really rough state. It had basically no gameplay. You just kind of walk around, but that soundscape, the soundtrack, the visuals, just, you know, absolutely 10 out of 10 for me. I'm such a sucker for a game like that. And this is totally that. You know, I really,
it's very different.
Really loved it. And
does it have a release date yet?
No, they just delayed it into 2025.
Yeah,
I've got no idea when it's coming. But like, if it was gonna be 24 and now it's 25, maybe it's soon. But then again, it's like being made primarily by one guy, so I don't know. Like, you know, who knows what's happening? But yeah, man, that's definitely very high on my list. I would say, obviously, you know, your sort of big ticket item that's gonna like take over life in the early part of the year is gonna be Monster Hunter Wilds. Very, very excited for that. And I think that's really the only like kind of big game that I can think of that's dropping next year, that we know is dropping next year, that I'm really pumped about. Are there any other like massive?
I got one that I feel like it's got buzz, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't come top to mind for a lot of people. And I think it's because whenever I see it, I'm like, this can't be real. It's Crimson Desert. That one.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay. Interesting.
Every time I look at it, I'm like, my tagline for it has been, this is kind of what I imagined when I bought my Series X and my PS5, like what games could do, like its expansiveness, its visual detail, the amount of mechanics. Like you see a little Breath of the Wild, a little Assassin's Creed, Dragon's Dogma, like you can get on a giant dragon and like raise down villages. Like it's crazy. Like there's just so much to this game, and its scope looks unfathomable.
Insane.
Like I just never seen anything like it in a trailer in years, where it brought me back to that time when I was like in college and seeing the Xbox One and PS4 for the first time. And there were certain games I was like jonesing for, and I couldn't wait. And it took a few years to really get that feeling realized. And I have to admit, I think the first time I got it was either Witcher 3 or Batman Arkham Knight, like where I was like, oh, this feels like what I bought my PS4 for. And Crimson Desert is like that. It looks like it could be that moment for me. Like, I mean, the devs have been really transparent. They put out like an hour of gameplay. They did another trailer to the Game Awards. They're saying it's late 2025. I just feel by looking at it, I'm like, this has to slip. Like it's a similar feeling to, I think we all saw Cyberpunk 2077 behind closed doors, where like when I saw that game, I was like, how is this running on current hardware? Like, how is that possible? When I saw it in 2018, I want to say, at E3. It just reminds me of that feeling there. So this is on my list. Like, this is top of the list for me. I'm like, I
play it.
Really want to check it out and just see if this is actually a real thing, or like what's the catch?
That's the catch for me is I look at this and I really want to play it. It seems incredibly ambitious, but does it have zest? Does it have the spice? Does it have soul?
Yeah.
Like, I need to know, like, is this guy that I'm playing as, like, am I going to give a shit about him? Is there going to be world building? Is there any of that? Because right now, all of that stuff looks a little generic. So I'm hoping either that stuff is good, or all those crazy gameplay elements that they crammed in, all that, like, that overflowing buffet is enough that stuff doesn't matter.
Yeah,
but we'll have to see. 2025, when they said 2025, I recall previously they had not been confident on 2025. They were like, 2026, because they also had that other game, Dokev, that slipped to God knows when.
Yeah, right.
That's also that doesn't even have a date now.
No, that's right.
But with if they can do it towards the end of 2025, that would be cool. But we'll see.
Yeah, make a good point then. Yeah, maybe that is the catch. That there's no depth to this all. It's just like a rambunctious sandbox and nothing more. We've been certainly getting a lot of those types of games that are like blender games. Like, here's a bunch of things you like. Have fun.
Yeah, I like rambunctious sandbox. That's a really good phrase. Keep that one.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to learning about the Switch 2 finally. Rumor mill.
Oh man,
winding down. Just getting the reality check. I mean, unbelievable amount of leaks for this thing. It's like just show it.
Give me
but like I really see, the thing is, personally, I really just think it's gonna be like a Switch, but it just with better graphics. And like, could you say the same thing of every other console? Sure, but like I don't know if this one in particular, I mean, then the leaks show that the form factor isn't even any different. It's still an LCD screen apparently, which I think is a massive bummer. Like, that really sucks. Yeah, man, I don't know about this. Like.
Yeah. There's still this weird, like, what if factor for me that has me excited because it's Nintendo, where it's like, oh, this might be the time that Nintendo is boring and they do just like a regular little upgrade. But then the back of my head says, but what if they don't? What if they fuck it up? Like they often do. So I'm curious.
That's what I'm wondering, because when they were kind of boring and they're like, oh, the Wii is amazing. We're going to do the Wii U, right? They're like, this is safe. And they do the Wii U, and everyone thought it was like just a new, like, oh, we'll pick up the new Nintendo console when it comes around. This is just like a little addition to the Wii family. It's like, no, this is like your new hardware, and it just doesn't sell at all. And now they're going to do that. Seems like with the Switch. I mean, the leaks, like, there's literally like case manufacturers who are leaking form factors and 3D printing them and sending them to people and being like, this is what it's going to look like. This is like, there's a new button. There's like magnetic Joy-Cons. Like, all the details are kind of getting spilled before this thing's real. So I'm just like, what, if any, is there a twist? And will Nintendo being boring and safe actually help them out this time? Like, is the Switch that much of a phenomenon where they'll manage to create that separation that they couldn't with the Wii and the Wii U?
It has that factor. It has that potential factor where, remember when smartphones used to be exciting, and every reveal, like Steve Jobs event, like was so exciting because there was going to be something. All those phones would leak beforehand, and you'd get the case manufacturers, the specs, the form factor, but there was always some thing that these things had that you didn't know about, that didn't leak. And it was usually an incredible new software feature, some innovation with software or something like that. So I'm just holding out hope that maybe Nintendo has a fun little trick up their sleeve.
I think it'll always come down to software, right? Like the back compat or a virtual console or some overhaul to their Switch Online service, something like that.
Some sort of like maybe like a retroactive Waluigi.
Yeah.
You know, like AI upscaling where it inserts Waluigi into every game. Sorry, that's stupid. Cut that. I was working on
keep it in, keep it in, 100% keep it
in. Yeah, last thing I'm just looking forward to. I don't think it's coming out next year, but Exodus. They got a new trailer today, actually, as we're recording.
Oh yeah, what do you think of that?
I mean, as a huge Mass Effect fan, like, I mean, look, KOTOR is my favorite game of all time. So you got the lead designer directing the project. I'm like, okay, like, all right, don't twist my arm or anything. I'm here. Drew Karpyshyn's writing it. Wrote my favorite game of all time. It's like, okay, sure.
Wait, what? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Okay.
But the twist I tell my audience is I'm like, look, as much as I have confidence in like that duo, it's obviously we've learned with projects like Callisto Protocol or even Anthem. It's like Anthem, they brought back Drew Karpyshyn. That was the hype thing. Like, oh, the original BioWare writer is back and he's here on this new IP. Even though it's a live service, this is encouraging. And like, no one remembers anything about Anthem's universe. Like, you know,
there was nothing to it though. There was nothing to it.
Yeah. So I just that's why I'm not getting ahead of myself. But I mean, I think for pre-alpha, looks really good. They're not putting a date on it, which I think is smart. I think they understand the mission. It's like, oh, BioWare's got kind of weak legs. If we deliver, kind of just slide in really nice. Like, I'm just talking from business. I don't want BioWare to go anywhere, but I think they understand the task at hand. But as a huge Mass Effect fan, it's been described as like Interstellar, but a role-playing game. So like, you have time dilation.
Like Interstellar, greatest film ever made.
Yeah, it's awesome. So you have like time dilation, but you'll make choices. You'll bring back this technology, and then you'll leave it in the civilization and go out for another Exodus, and then come back and like the whole world has changed because it's been thousands of years since you actually came back. So it's got some cool ideas. I want to. Yeah, it's very ambitious. That's the other thing.
That's very Peter Molyneux sounding. Like you're gonna plant a tree and then the tree's gonna grow.
Yeah. So that's where a lot of my interest lies. These ambitious, fluffy projects that may amount to nothing. But
that's speaking of sci-fi. I'm looking forward to the Alters. I haven't really watched or seen too much about it other than hearing the concept and going, okay, that sounds cool.
Yeah. So, I think that's coming out on Game Pass too, which is nice.
Oh,
but
nice. There you go.
I got delayed this year, if I remember.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, cool. Nice.
Yeah. Anything else, gents? We're pushing past an hour here. Anything else as we wrap this up? You're looking forward to that you liked, you didn't like? Get your bars off.
Well, I will say, the only thing I will say is one last thing I'll throw in that I really like, because I haven't talked about it too much anywhere else, is Helldivers 2.
Oh, yeah.
I obviously, like, it's a big AAA, like, obviously, but for someone like me, I'm not a multiplayer guy, and it really clicked with me, but I want to, like, shout out the people out there that have probably played it like me, right? Where it comes out, you and a couple of buddies, you're playing it, you love it, and then something else comes out and you kind of move on and you look back fondly at Helldivers 2 and say, that game's awesome. The internet tells you it's not because of all these updates and all these things where like the devs changed one thing, the community got mad, blah, 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 blah. All that noise. I have managed to completely flip over, like just jump over all that. And I just look at it as a great game that I think I got my money's worth when I played it. Really, really enjoyed it. And I fired up that new update, and I'm only kind of like getting my feet wet because it's been so long since I played, but it seems cool. So maybe I missed all that bullshit in between. Anyway, nice. Good game. One of the games of the year.
I do like that one a lot. Yeah, I played very little in the scheme of things compared to others. Like I was a bit of a snobby Helldivers fan, if you will. I like stepped into 2 and I'm like, I like the OG top down.
I can respect that totally.
Approach. Like, this was kind of badass. And then you guys came to the man and made a third person shooter. But it's awesome nonetheless. It's a good game. Ralph, anything else you want to shout out, positive or negative or in between?
I would say the only other one is Pacific Drive, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Not sure if either of you played Pacific Drive, but in fact, funnily enough, they just announced that they're making a TV show based on Pacific Drive, which I can totally see working. But it's a survival game set in the it's kind of like roadside picnic-esque. Like imagine the Stalker zone, but you have to drive a shitty jalopy through it to get from point A to point B, just keeping that thing running by scavenging parts.
I love that.
And honestly, one of the best games I played this year. I just loved it so much. It's nailed the survival loop. It nailed like the vibe and the setting. It had some surprisingly compelling storytelling as well. Visually, I loved it. Just a really great game. And if you haven't swung around to it yet, I really recommend picking it up. Full price. I think it's worth it, on sale especially. Just a really, really great video game that I think probably didn't get as much attention at the end of the year as I think it deserved.
I agree.
Yeah, that one snuck out. I didn't even know that came out. So
yeah. It was like Feb. It was, well, you know why it was Feb? I think it was that was the same month as like all the other shit going down. So I kind of got lost in that noise. I think.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. That's on my game of the year list too.
Yeah, that's great. That's it.
It's awesome.
Very good.
Wow,
It's unique. That's the thing. It's unique. Like I was like, oh, this is unlike. This is cool. This is something I haven't seen before, and sometimes that's enough for me.
Yeah, especially with how much we review. Like when you get that new feeling, it hits. Like my last shout out will actually be Indiana Jones, just because I know very popular, relevant game, but really I feel like that's a game that had every option laid out before. Like okay, like you inspired Uncharted and Tomb Raider, so therefore it's your turn to come full circle and take from them and make this game that third-person cinematic, explosions, all this shit. And they decide to make a first-person immersive Dishonored-like game, and I'm like, I love those kind of stealth-style games. I don't think we get a lot of just purely stealth games, and so, like, I was already pretty high on Indiana Jones and the Great Circle going in, because I was like, this just looks like they get it. Then I watched all 3 movies and I was like, oh my God. And then I played it right after. I was like, wow, they really get it. But I just love that they made, in my opinion, every challenging decision to make this game different. The side content also felt super purposeful.
Yes.
There was so much more game here than I expected. Like being a 30+ hour game was not on my bingo card.
They undersold it. They played it very close to the chest.
Yeah.
Because I was totally surprised.
Yeah, they kept saying, oh, it's our biggest game yet. But I'm like, yeah, Wolfenstein 2 is like 8 hours. So what are we talking, like 15 tops? Yeah, like I'll beat this in a couple of days. And I'm reviewing it. I'm like, am I going to make embargo, man? I was like, I don't know. I was like, this game's friggin' long. And it's because all the side content just felt worthwhile. So I just wanted to shout that one out. That really snuck into my top 3. I was floored by how good Indiana Jones really was. I thought the storytelling was great. Troy Baker just sounded like Harrison Ford, went into a time machine. Brilliant performance there. Just everything they did, man, just knocked that out of the park. I was really thoroughly surprised by that one. And it looks like old Todd Howard still got it. Love to see it.
Yeah, he was behind a lot of that, right? Like he kind of kicked off, that whole idea, that whole concept.
Yeah, it was, he had the idea. There's an interesting history behind Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. He had the idea for this game in 2009. And because his favorite movie is Raiders of the Lost Ark. So he pitched this game.
That's the worst one.
Multiple times. Really?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I was going to say, you like Temple of Doom more?
Well, how much time do we have now? Keep going.
Are you a Last Crusade enjoyer? Like, is that your favorite?
No, I'm a Temple of Doom weirdo.
Oh, okay, cool. I like that. I like that.
Sorry, everyone.
But yeah, he had this idea for a game and like pitched it multiple times to Lucas, and it got rejected. And like he kept the design documents and the ideas, and then years later, I guess it got like the green light, and like he went to Machine Games, and pretty much they've said in interviews like he laid out like the design for them and everything. Like this is what it's gonna be, and they just kind of took the ball and ran with it. So.
Yeah, it actually came down to somebody behind the scenes. It's how it always works, but it was like somebody behind the scenes that was aware of that, got a job somewhere else that could then get that ball rolling and make that happen. And it's nice when it works out like that because it's awesome. It kicks ass.
I just feel Todd's had a hard couple of years, so it was good between the Fallout show and Indiana Jones to be like, yeah, there you go, buddy. Nice job. So... happy for him.
Who's the game director on it? Who's the game director?
He was executive producer.
No, who was the game director?
Oh, who's the director? Jerk Gustafson.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So
that's the real. Yeah. That's the real GOAT right there.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But otherwise, gents, fantastic chatting with you. Thank you guys for lending me so much of your time here today. Always a pleasure chatting with my 2 favorite gents on the webs. Everyone probably already knows where to find you, but just in case this is somehow their first introduction to some legends here, we'll start with you, Ralph. Where can everyone find you wherever they want to get more of you?
Chill Up YouTube channel. I'm there all the time. Too much, unfortunately. So yeah, you can find. I'm also on Blue Sky these days.
Nice. There you go. Jake, how about you?
I'm on all the social medias at Jake Baldino, but not a very good endorsement. Like, I'm not good at posting. I'm way more just in the video making trenches, where you can find my work on Game Ranks, youtube.com/GameRanksTV, and also my personal channel, Jake Baldino. Just look up my name. I have a lot of fun over there.
Yes, sir.
And yeah, that's it. Oh, and then the podcast, that stupid podcast we do.
Yeah.
The Friends Per Second podcast. It's one of my favorite things to do. We talk games. We're actually on hiatus now until January, but you can catch our latest episode where we talk to the folks behind The Witcher 4. That was pretty fun. So yeah, Ralph wasn't there. So I mean, he was there in spirit.
Remotely.
He was a digital ghost.
I was very bummed to miss that for sure.
But it's fun, so I'd love for people to check it out.
Right on. Well, I'll have all of that linked down below for everyone to check it out, from the podcast to the individual channels, social media handles. So please follow these two gentlemen on their journey. They're some of the best the industry has to offer. Pleasure. I appreciate you guys just lending me your time today. So thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, catch you next time around.